Come on, join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Anyone here for the first time? Anyone want to share why they're here?
I'm here. My friend Lisa brought me.
Did she tell you where you were going, or?
Decided we were going to meditate.
All
I
right.
trust her.
So you weren't forced here.
No.
No. Awesome.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my neighbor Larry helped me fix the drain.
Larry's quite skillful. Yes, he has a lot of talents. Yes. Yeah. That's good. Well, glad you're here. Yes. See all these friends that care about you. Anybody else here for the first time want to share maybe why they're here? Anybody here for the first time doesn't want to share why they're here? Who keeps coming back and why?
Keep coming back to find what whole strategy after I meditated. And especially on Tuesday night here, so I enjoyed the layman's terms type of presentation.
Yeah. So he said he keeps coming back because he enjoys the serenity that he feels when he's here, especially on Tuesday, kind of the layman's terms. So you don't feel this calm and peaceful out there all day long?
No.
Why not?
I'm supposed to be practicing for that here.
Yes, it is. It's practice for it here. So when you leave here at like 8 o'clock on Tuesday night, how long before that like calm, peaceful feeling goes away?
Depends on who I'm in contact with. To be honest.
Go straight home, go to bed, you're safe. But
Yeah.
if you contact any other human beings, then it's over.
Yeah, I guess it's my perception.
Yeah. So once we're done, home, straight to bed, you're good. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I think we'll just start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before you begin. If you are here for the first time especially, nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away, most likely. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Okay? Don't judge your practice. We judge things all day long, what we look like, what we wear, what we eat. We're constantly in these judgment modes. And the practice of meditation is learning to go beyond judgment and just abide in sensation of breath. Especially if you're new, you're not going to think nothing. Often people think that meditation is about going blank or shutting your mind off or thinking nothing. You'd end up sitting there telling yourself, think nothing, and you're still thinking. So you might as well get up and go do something. Your mind's going to race. It'll continue to wander. Recognize the wandering mind and work on bringing it back to the present moment. I'll say things periodically to either, one, wake you up because you've fallen asleep. Some of you might be asleep already. It's not the end of the world, but you didn't come all this way and pay all this money to go to sleep. So I definitely try to stay awake. And two, again, just to remind you that you're lost in thought and to try to bring you back to present moment, all right? Posture, if you're on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the laps. If you're on the benches or chairs, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Release that thought. Returning attention, focus to the breath. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now is quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind. Whatever you're sitting with at this moment has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for every one of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. more reactions. That's what we get every single day. Practice meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This is not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. Sometimes that present moment is pleasant, and sometimes that present moment is unpleasant. Sometimes that present moment is neutral. But the practice of meditation is learning to bring us back to the present moment. Most of us spend so much time wrapped up in the past and worried about the future. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And learning to be kind to people, always. That's why it's so simple. We just all have to be nice to people. It's a practice. Every day doesn't go how you want it to. Every day will never go how you want it to, most likely. I mean, we're lucky if we get like a 30-minute period of life going the way we want it to, the way our mind is. So much time trying to control, fix, manipulate, past, future, telling stories, lost in thought. Why this, why that, when this, when that, what if this, what if that. Very little time just sitting and being. Trying to create, trying to build, trying to produce. Very little time just being. There's a sutra, the Heart Sutra. It's one of the most commonly recited Buddhist sutras around the world in the Mahayana school of Buddhism. Many temples, they start rituals with the Heart Sutra all over the world, and it's pretty short. But there's a line in there that says, with nothing to attain, bodhisattvas relying on prajnaparamita have no obstructions in their mind. Having no obstructions, there is no fear. And departing far from confusions and imaginings, they reach ultimate nirvana. Now, in case that didn't make sense to you as is, let me break it down briefly and just take a few moments to talk about this. The first part, with nothing to attain. How many of you spent your day trying to attain nothing? I mean, if all you did today was lay on the couch and watch Netflix, you still tried to attain doing nothing but laying on the couch and watching Netflix. And you would have, if you did that, successfully attained that. And there was still that effort to attain something. But nothing to attain bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are enlightened beings. It doesn't mean you're like fully enlightened. It just means that the practice is to help yourself suffer less for the benefit of you and everybody else. So bodhisattvas relying on prajnaparamita. Prajnaparamita is perfection of wisdom. It's understanding our levels of greed, anger, and ignorance, which is the cause of our suffering. And working through that to bring a sense of compassion and wisdom into our lives. Less greed, less anger, less ignorance cultivates more compassion, more wisdom. Have no obstructions in their mind. So if you cultivate compassion and wisdom, imagine if your entire day was filled with endless compassion and wisdom. You wouldn't have too many obstructions in your mind. You'd have a hell of a lot less complaints. Anyone in here complain ever about anything? One, two of you, right on. Bunch of liars in the room here. Good thing I'm not doing the precept talk tonight about no lying, right? So we have these obstructions, but if we're filled with compassion and wisdom, these obstructions kind of go away, right? So bodhisattvas relying on prajnaparamita have no obstructions in their mind, and having no obstructions, there is no fear. And really what I wanted to talk about is fear, but I wanted to give it some context and lead up to it. So having no obstructions, there is no fear. If your entire day is filled with kindness and compassion and wisdom and generosity and patience, then you're just actually abiding in this present moment, being alive, not afraid. But when you try to control the future, fix the future, manipulate the future, plan your future, this is where fear kicks in. What if this doesn't happen? It probably won't. You know how many things right now in your life you hope will happen that probably won't happen? I mean, just embrace that idea. That's the truth. The flip side of that is, do you know how many things that you have no idea are going to happen in your future that are really wonderful, that will happen? A lot. But for some reason, we think with some level of intellect, we have the ability to completely control, predict, and manipulate what our future is going to be like. And because of this, we abide in so much fear. Departing far from confusions and imaginings, we reach ultimate nirvana. Confusions and imaginings, the way I've always interpreted that is my entire view of reality is nothing but one big, grand, confusing illusion. Meaning me, Jeff, an unenlightened person, has some perception and view of the world that once in a while I actually think is correct. And that is where the ignorance comes in. Because I'm stuck in my own mind, my own views, my own perceptions. But I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. To reach ultimate nirvana, nirvana is the literal word of the meaning of the word nirvana means to extinguish, right? When the Buddha died, they say he entered into parinirvana, meaning he died, he's not coming back, karma's taken care of, he's good, right? Translated that into our terms, think about nirvana as just kind of getting through your day in a happy, peaceful state. And not because you got like all the ice cream you wanted or all the whatever you wanted, right? This practice isn't about satisfying all of your cravings and desires. That's actually the cause of why we suffer. Because we have so many cravings and so many desires based on these illusions of how we think the world is and should be. And so we try to live up to that our entire lives. And it all comes back to the first line in that, with nothing to attain. And again, if those of you are brand new to Buddhism, it doesn't mean that you just become this blob and sit around and do nothing, right? We've all done that at times. But even that is doing something. So in this huge effort of trying to attain nothing, right, with nothing to attain, the real practice is focused on what is your intention throughout your day. And leave it at that. Is what you're trying to do filled with me, greed, anger, ignorance? Or is what you're trying to do filled with generosity, compassion, and wisdom, with the mindset that there's a whole world of people out there that are suffering just like you are? All you'd have to do is look at the person next to you, in front of you, behind you. They're also probably not here just because they were bored, right? You don't get into this practice because you're bored and have nothing else to do. You get into this practice because you realize, like, wow, this head drives me crazy all day long. And suffering sucks. Okay. That's how I sum up what got me into this practice. And it's summed up differently for different people. But again, most people don't show up here because everything in your life is wonderful and peaceful. We're tired of being angry, or depressed, or sad, or anxious, or stressed, or whatever word it is. So see what it would be like to go beyond the fear. Fears of what other people think. Fears of how our life is going to work out. Fears of wearing socks that don't match. He's not here tonight. Right? We have little fears. You know, how does my shirt look? How do my shoes look? We have grand fears. What's going to happen when I die? What about when my loved ones die? What about animals when they pass, right? We have big fears. Fear of failure. What would it be like to live beyond these fears? It's a really wonderful question. Not to answer, but to me, again, the practice of living beyond fear is recognizing that there's a story in my head that I've told myself every single day about what I think that day should be like. And the attachment to that story. And when I surrender to that and I just focus on intention of each action, the effort to attain and the effort of, and the feeling of fears go away. Because then you're present. So, now that you're all completely fearless, I'll stop there and open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address. Yes.
So I'm not gonna say it the way you said it, but tonight you said that you do each Tuesday night, something about not wanting for anything except for sitting and breathing.
Yes.
And for some reason, I heard it this evening and it just felt wonderful.
Yeah.
I understood for like a nanosecond what it would be like just for a second to not have any wants except to sit and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just wonderful.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's I've been leading meditation a long time, and probably for the last 8 to 10 years saying basically the exact same thing every time I lead. I've changed it a bit, slightly here or there, altered things here or there from things I've learned or feedback. But for the most part, it's the same things. And when I lead, and anytime I work with other people leading, I always tell them, every time you lead meditation, lead it as if you've never led it before, right? If you're saying the same thing over and over and over every day for 10 years, you could kind of just not feel it, but you have to feel it. And for me as a practitioner, to feel that part, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe, which is ironic that you bring that up, because that in essence is tied to what I talked about tonight with nothing to attain and the Heart Sutra and overcoming fear. And yay, congratulations, like you said, even for a nanosecond of being with that. And what that shows you is it's possible. And what that shows you and shows all of us is that if we can abide in just sensation of breath more often, all you have to do is ask yourselves, how much time do you spend throughout your day wrestling with trying to figure out everything and solve everything? So there's your whole life, your day, and then there's your 5 minutes, 20 minutes, hour, whatever amount of time you allocate for meditation. And we still separate those two things. But what if throughout your day, all of a sudden you just paused in everything you're trying to create and build and whatever, and you just were like, I'm just going to sit and breathe. And for this nanosecond, I'm going to stop trying to attain or work through anything. But I'm just going to be with the breath for just one breath. Because sometimes that one breath throughout your day and the awareness of that one breath opens everything up to just kind of letting go of all the stuff we're trying to do. I have to work on this every single day. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
I find it curious that recently in sessions with my therapist, talk about everything, and usually by the end I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? What's my assignment moving forward? And just be. I just want you to just be.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you said that tonight, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
coming at me again.
yeah. A lot of people tell me we're cheaper than therapy, you know. I often joke, and I say it jokingly, but also very seriously, that, you know, half the people in this room are in therapy, and the other half are therapists, right? And that somebody years ago said, if you're into Buddhism, you should probably check out therapy, and if you're in therapy, you should probably check out Buddhism. There's a lot of similarities between the two, right? I'll give you this just as food for thought, and hopefully I won't completely destroy your therapy, because I am no therapist. I have no license, no degrees, no certifications, no letters, no trainings to do anything along those lines. So now that I preface that, the one big difference between, for me, my view of Buddhist practice and meditation and therapy is that therapy is a lot, like you just said. It's a lot of talking, getting it out there, you know, processing, and which is all extremely helpful and beneficial. In Buddhist practice, you're just sitting, you're just being, you're just going. And in that act, there's nothing to process. There's no stories to tell. There's no trying to work through 20 years of trauma, right? All that stuff is real and needs to happen on that level. And then this practice is, yes, but here I am. And I can be okay right here, going forward.
How does,
Does that make sense, first of all?
yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
That does make sense. How, do you have thoughts on faith and fear?
Faith and fear?
The relationship between the two, or how that spectrum?
Yeah, definitely. I think being fearless has a lot to do. So, and this is your first time here, yeah. So, for the most part, show of hands. How many of you in this room are Buddhist? Yeah, I see about 4 hands, right? What that means is when you bring Buddhism into a new culture and you're surrounded by people who are raised Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, pagan, or lack thereof, this room is filled with so many different religious faiths and beliefs that have been ingrained in us, like it or not, right? One way or the other, and one has their own dynamic with that. And it's important to understand that for me, as a Jewish kid who was taught certain things growing up, that part of being fearless is having complete faith, but also in you, in your actions. So for me as a Buddhist practitioner, that's where my faith is. My faith is in, if I work every single day on thinking good thoughts, speaking good words, and doing good deeds, then I can create a beautiful world for myself and those around me. I have absolute faith in that. And therefore, the fears go away. Now, Buddha was asked, again, since we're kind of on that topic, he was asked at the time, in India, 500 years before Christ, should we believe in gods and goddesses? Because it was Hindu, so everybody believed in goddesses and gods at that time. And the Buddha said, look, I'm just a human. I'm not a god, I can't tell you. He wouldn't answer the question. He said, if you believe in that, you do. If you don't, you don't. I can simply teach you the practice of how to live kindly, with compassion, kindness, morality, generosity, patience. That's what he taught. So he wanted people to put faith in the practice and in the actions, right? And someone asked the Dalai Lama years ago, does this country need more Buddhists? And he said, the world has enough Buddhists. This country just needs more people who are peaceful and happy. So if you have faith in whatever, beautiful. If you don't have faith in whatever, beautiful. But have faith that if you put these words and this practice into action, your life will change. And for me personally, that's created a tremendous level of fearlessness. Because a big part of having fear has to do with another word. Starts with C. Anyone like to control anything? Anybody? Okay, so we did the religious Buddhist question. How many of you in here like to control people or places or things? Again, a bunch of liars, right? So we like to control things. And having faith has a lot to do with letting go of control. So those are my thoughts on that, for whatever it's worth. Yeah. Yeah.
I think well, I know that what I'm hearing is, listening to you and your questions, it's like Zen, finding your own moments for Zen. And for me, it was a breakthrough, and I realized cleaning out the cat litter box could be a moment of Zen.
Yes.
And so every day when I sit there,
Yes.
Those are moments.
Yes. Let me paraphrase. You became fully enlightened cleaning out poop from a litter box. Right? And the funny thing about that, in the Zen, all the stories for 2,000 years of the great Zen masters and their moments of awakening, and all the stories and books and everything you read about the Zen practice, it's never because they were like, doing some tremendous Zazen seated meditation or studying some sutra. It was always like they were walking down the road and a rock fell from a cliff and hit them on the head. And it was in that moment they became fully present with things as they are. And so it is really in the mundane, and this is very much, at least for me as a Zen practitioner, geared towards that practice. It is very much those simple, everyday, mundane tasks that we have the opportunity to awaken to the present moment. The challenge is those everyday, simple, mundane tasks, we don't usually like them. We resist them, right? And I remember growing up and my father always wanted me to come help rake leaves. I was like, I don't want to rake leaves. It's Saturday morning. There's got to be something on, a cartoon or football or baseball, something I could watch. I don't want to rake leaves. I'm like 8 years old and I had this huge resistance. I was still sleeping and I could hear him on the side yard, like making all the noise. I'm like, oh my God, he's raking leaves again. He wants me to rake leaves. And I had this huge resistance to raking leaves. Then you end up in a Buddhist monastery. And you know what one of the most beautiful things in the world to do there is? Rake leaves. So it took me 25 years later to finally become present with just the beauty of raking leaves. We even sang songs while we were raking leaves. There was so much enjoyment in the raking of leaves. And this isn't a plug, although it could be. There's lots of leaves outside here. Every day, if you all have an hour and you want to just come rake leaves, you're welcome to. We have brooms and rakes and leaves. We just need you. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
When you were asking about why people come here
Ah.
repeatedly, and I do.
Yeah.
It's almost 2 years now. I think that, the reason I started was because I wanted to learn another pattern of living than what I've been brought up in. I wasn't condemning the way I've been brought up. I wasn't abandoning that. It was just that I wanted to see whether my mind would be able to come into something else. And the reason I keep coming back is because Buddhist practice allows me to break pattern when I need to. And I can cut off the past and cut off the future and be here for a nanosecond. But it stopped me from doing what I was doing, which was getting tensed up and afraid and wondering what was going on.
Right.
And I find myself using it to, it's tedious in a way because I find myself, when I become angry or when I become upset with something, instead of just going with it, I constantly am stepping back and analyzing it, which I would never have done before.
Right.
So
yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I often, you've heard me say this, but Buddhist practice in a way, it can be annoying.
Yes.
To actually have to stop and kind of check yourself when you're about to be really mean or rude to somebody, that's annoying. It's a lot easier to just be what to somebody and then later like beg for forgiveness or try to justify why we did it or try to prove why we were right or, create the whole scenario of how we were okay to be that, whatever. it's really a lot of hard work and annoying and time consuming to stop ourselves and say, wait, I should not do this.
Well, I find people who know me well, or it's, why are you stopping? What are you doing? And then I start explaining, and they're sort of like, a friend of mine who's a real yoga expert, he said, I can tell you're a Buddhist. And I said, why? He said, because you're very complicated.
Right. Yeah, I always, I use this story a lot. Sometimes the person's here, sometimes not. But, somebody who's been coming on and off and pretty consistently for years went through like a 3-month stretch of not being here and then showed up and it's like, yeah, my wife made me come back. Right? Because we recognize, or I should say other people, they recognize how we are changing. And that's important, right? And that's where I talk about in the Bodhisattva practice and path is that it isn't just for you, right? We're doing this for ourselves so we can be happier, kinder, gentler, more peaceful, and have more pleasant moments throughout our day. But the beauty of that is when we're not mean, angry, nasty, judgmental people, everybody else benefits from that. Those we know and love, those we spend all our time with, those that are strangers, those that are making our coffee, those that are taking our orders at restaurants, those that do customer service, things like that. They're all much happier when we are happier, kinder people. So everybody really benefits from that. And that hopefully is our motivation because we're usually pretty good at letting ourselves down. But when we use at the heart of our motivation to do this practice for the benefit of others, it tends to work out and hold us to it much better. Other thoughts, questions?
Tonight, when I was leaving, I went out to the driveway and there was a giant flatbed tow truck doing this whole towing thing, blocking me. And I got upset and I went and got in the car and I thought, I'm gonna go yell at the guy. And I thought, oh, this could be an opportunity. So it was really wonderful. I watched myself just calm down, be aware and breathe. And I was totally calm and it literally took them 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that's a big achievement.
That's a huge win.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes, we could give you a round of applause. That's like hitting the jackpot in Vegas or something like that. And but in all truth, and I'll kind of close with this thought, is that for those who didn't hear it, right, you walk outside and there's a huge flatbed tow truck blocking your car. And you wanted to go yell at them. And you recognize this is an opportunity to practice. And you didn't yell at them. And it took 20 minutes. And you waited. And these are huge, kind of breakthroughs. Because what it shows us, and I always talk about this if you've never heard me say this, is that we don't meditate and talk about Buddhist teachings and come together here just to do it here. Because everybody, for the most part, you're here for an hour, a week, or whatever it is, and everybody here is typically nice to you. Usually the meanest one to anybody around here is me, right? People around here are nice to each other. So here, we don't really have an opportunity to practice. Out there, when those darn tow truck drivers get in our way, right, who are, by the way, just doing their job, making their money to support their families and doing what they need to do, right? But the beauty of that is two things. One, you caught yourself. And that's really the huge kind of, I like to call first step of kind of what, Jim was just saying, is that you begin to recognize, wait, I'm about to go off on somebody, right? And you catch yourself before it happens. And that changes. And your whole, again, I could only imagine, those 20 minutes, well, the second thing I was going to say is that this will make more sense. If you go over there and start screaming and yelling at the person, how much do you think that's going to expedite things, right? Probably not so much. They probably don't really care, or maybe they would be nice and move anyways, right? But especially on your way to the Buddhist class, you can't go screaming and yelling at somebody, right? That's not very nice. But during the 20-minute period that you were waiting, I think you kind of said this briefly, but how did you feel?
I felt good, actually. It was very calming. and I wasn't processing it like,
Sure.
well, I don't really care, or it's not the end of the world. I wasn't doing that. I was just going in
Mm-hmm.
and just completely surrendering.
Yeah, and that's again, that's a real life example of just surrendering to the present moment. Again, going back to what I was talking about, nothing to attain. You gave up this idea, this attainment of wanting the tow truck driver to be out of your way. You stopped thinking that you were more important than the person was. You stopped thinking that where you had to go was more important than what they were doing. You stopped thinking you were the most important person in the universe. And you gave up on trying to attain anything. And you just surrendered to that moment, and you were with it. Now, if you start yelling and screaming at the person, whether it takes 5 minutes or 20 minutes, that whole time, you're uptight, you're anxious, you're upset, you're frustrated, you're irritated. And then afterwards, you drive off and you usually probably feel like crap for what you just did. You know, so that's a wonderful experience and I think a great moment of practice. So, and then the next question, I always like to, because as Suzuki Roshi would say, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement, which what that means to me is that we have these wonderful breakthroughs and moments, but now I'm going to throw one more challenge at you just so you don't get all like high and mighty thinking you figured it all out, right? I know you're not. Now, what if that happened and you weren't on the way to meditation? Oh, I wish you could have seen the look on her face. She did a big oh and kind of like, right? So that's the key. And again, I really will end with this thought. Wonderful progress, beautiful. I want to like praise you for all that. And then now the challenge is something like that will happen again, but you'll be on the way to somewhere else. Maybe it's to the grocery store, maybe it's to a doctor's appointment, maybe it's to pick up a friend. It'll be something different from meditation. And I'm bringing this up because when that happens, hopefully you'll remember, okay, if I treat this the same way I treated it when I was on my way to meditation, this moment too can be just as calm.
The airport.
All the things in your head right now, are going to be challenging to do, those places. So, baby steps, but I just want to point that out. Yeah. So, all right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Megan's father during his time of suffering and to Megan during her suffering as well. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.